Howdy boys, I'm back again. This one, honestly, is probably going to be a fairly quick report. I've only actually got 2 pictures. But this is from my round 2 of the last live event that I did. After getting the shit kicked out of me in round 1, I was down on one of the lower tables. And I was playing Justin. It was actually his first game at the event because he couldn't make the game in the morning. So he was on, I think the buy was like a 15-5, so he got 5 and we matched up because I was on 2. He's quite a newer player, so I think he said that he'd only had like 10 games in total when we were chatting and had never played Warriors before, so it was always going to be a bit of a difficult game probably for him. You know, when you're learning your own army, learning your opponent's army, and learning the game, there's a lot of things that you need to keep in your head, basically. He brought vampires, where he had a Strigoi Count, Necromancer of Evocation, Barracking BSB, 2 pretty big blocks of ghouls, 2 units of zombies, a unit of 4 bat swarms, a big block of Barragar with great weapons, some direwolves, some wraiths, 6 vampire spawn, and 5 vampire knights. So, looking at this game, the Barragar are a problem for my Chosen because they've got multi-wins too, which is obviously, you know, a pretty hard counter. I do think in general I kind of fight better than him with my Chosen, so it's the sort of thing where like it's not avoid them at all costs, but I need to have buffs up or I need to have multiple units in there. I certainly can't fight him one-on-one pretty much. Other than that, I was sort of looking and going, you know, the ghouls are probably a pretty decent target for me, given that I've got a 4-up armor at least against all their attacks. Vampire spawn probably troublesome, like I'd have to watch my flanks and see what they do. The vampire knights I felt had a pretty decent chance of like damaging with my alchemy magic and mitigating that way basically. Into the game, we were playing a bit of a different, I think it's from the like alternate deployments or secondaries supplement. There's some book available on the website. Basically the table's divided into quarters with a 20-inch diameter circle cut out of the middle. Whoever wins deployment picks a quarter and their opponent deploys on the opposite quarter. And you can't deploy in that 20 diameter circle. The secondary is then basically you're trying to control each zone. So if you have a scoring unit in your, at the end of the game this is, if you have a scoring unit in your own quarter, you get 1 point. If you have a scoring unit in one of the corners that wasn't selected, you get 2 points. And if you have a scoring unit in your opponent's deployment zone, you get 3 points. So a total of, what's that, 8 points basically, if you happen to have a scoring unit in each zone. I don't really know how that sort of affected my decisions. It seemed to sort of, like I was pretty happy because I've got a lot of scoring units and they all fight pretty well. And my opponent has, you know, a vampire army, so other than I guess the vampire knights, his bubble has to be quite intact with his scoring unit. So I felt I had a pretty decent advantage of taking the outside corners. And then I was sort of stopping him from getting across into my quarter and hopefully pushing through into his quarter, basically. It was a little bit difficult, I think, in that like it's sort of a bigger flank to protect, but in retrospect, I think that probably wasn't a problem because, you know, you're sort of deploying in a bit of an arc, and because he's in the corner, it actually takes a lot more to get around you than on when you're 24 inches away and maybe can't spread across the whole edge of the board. So in retrospect, while I thought this was probably going to be a bit harder to keep my flanks in check because I'm pretty slow, it actually probably was okay and probably helped me, which is why, you know, my flanks were quite strong in the game. In terms of deployment, just off screen to the left, I've got my Sloth Chosen, who are basically just sort of pushing into this sort of quarter of the table and hoping to take that. I've got my Pride Knights, I've got my Greed Chosen, my Lust Warriors, my Gluttony Chosen, my Wrath Chosen, my Dogs, and my Envy Warriors. Pretty much the idea here was, I think I dropped everything because my opponent won the roll for sides, I'm pretty sure. And pretty much my thinking was that the Envy Knights are trying to sort of be cagey on this flank and stop things from getting around, pretty much. The Sloth Chosen and the Knights basically have the, with this house particularly, sort of a decent ability to control that area, stop anything from coming around, because it'll take quite a while for them to get around, and if they sit in that little zone there, I've got a hill over here that I can sit my units on and try and charge, basically. On the first turn, which is what this movement is after. I think this is actually after my opponent's movement, or during his movement, I should say. I didn't think that I needed my Knights to protect over there, because his Knights are only like March 14. So at this point, I was like, I might as well threaten down here in case something wants to push up into this area. My opponent, so he's got his Vampire Knights up here. He's got his Barrow Guard and with his BSB, and his Ghouls with his Vampire count, and behind them are a unit of Zombies with his Necro. He's got his Vampire spawn a bit far back. Probably what would have been better is if he'd been more aggressive with them. Like, realistically, he probably wants to fight. Like, he can ignore my dogs, pretty much, unless I, like, frenzy bait him out or whatever. But he's pretty happy fighting my Envy Warriors, I imagine. So I think maybe if he had just, rather than prioritizing the Zombies or the Wraiths, placed them a bit further up, and then pushed quite hard along there while staying a little bit more conservative in the center, it probably would have been better. Because this is like halfway through his movement. I've moved forward pretty much as far as I can, I think. And then he basically pushed his 2 blocks forward. But this was quite close to my Gluttony and my Wrath Chosen. The Greed guys are a little bit further back. But pretty much I think it was, I need a 6 on the dice. Oh, well, that's fine. We're all zoomed in. I think it was I need a 6 on the dice for both the Gluttony and the Wrath Chosen to get into his Ghouls. And that's a fight that I'll take all day, pretty much. Particularly when I've got the chance for buffs. And I don't know how closely you looked at my opponent's list, but his magic isn't really that strong. I think he's got I think he's got a Rise on his Vampire count. I think he's got a Rod of Battle, and then I think he's got an Evoc Adept as basically all of his magic. So pretty much come my turn, I did charge those 2 Chosen into his Ghouls, and I got them both. Which I think probably 2 charges, not Swift Stride where you need 6 on the dice. Probably slightly less than likely that you get both of them. But I did get both of them in this case. I can't exactly remember what magic I got through, but I think I pumped Armour onto my Gluttony guys, and I got Flaming off on my Wrath guys, because pretty much the Wrath guys were always going to target the Vampire count. That was their aim in going in there, and then the Gluttony guys just want to blend the unit. So what happened there is basically that I exploded those Ghouls, and the Gluttony guys got to overrun into his bunker, which, I mean, essentially this is already an enormous problem for my opponent, basically, because, one, he's lost a block of Ghouls and a Vampire count, which is like 1,000 points, 1,100 points. One of his 3 main combat units as well has been taken off. But then also because those Gluttony guys, the only thing on the board that is in any kind of position to threaten them is the Vampire spawn. I don't think they can make it on this turn. I can't remember exactly how far away they were. I didn't measure it. It's just an overrun. But they're far enough away that it's not likely they would make a charge in this turn. The Wraiths, if they want to charge, are going to get 1 bloke or 2 blokes clipping in. They're not going to do that much. So realistically, that's just an invitation for my Gluttony guys to go, cool, I'm going to kill your Necromancer, and then I'm going to chop up all these zombies, and you're going to crumble, and the game is pretty solidly in hand at that point, pretty much. So that sort of early aggressive push from my opponent went really bad because obviously I popped the unit and I got over into the bunker, which is like the one thing that a vampire player doesn't want to have happen. In terms of, I'll just sort of summarize what happened in the rest of the board, basically. So up in this top left corner, these vampire knights fought my Sloth Chosen. But they fought them late enough in the game that there wasn't enough happening. Like, I think he failed a charge, I failed a charge, then he made it. And it was like a turn after this, because there was a bit of shuffling involved prior to that. So a lot of other things had happened, and I could actually give them my Sloth Chosen extra armor. And pretty much what happened over there was, surprisingly and probably quite luckily for me, the Sloth Chosen actually just beat the Vampire Knights. So even though they're left like with strength 4 attacks, he'd still get a 3 up armor. On the charge, he's strength 7. He didn't do that much on the charge, and then the fact that I've got, you know, more attacks, a similar save to him, I've got spike shields, it just sort of went in my favor, and they won that combat over there. Down in the bottom right corner, pretty much these Wrath guys didn't have that much to do. I think they turned around. I think they got charged by the vampire spawn. Whatever happened over there, they fought the vampire spawn, and basically, I think they killed 4 of them on the turn they got charged, or on the turn they charged. So basically, because I strike first, and the vampire spawn don't have much by way of defense, I just butchered those guys. They didn't have enough attacks back to beat me, and then I popped them. And then pretty much the middle was just what I can do against these Beauregard. And I basically made a play where after I chaffed them with my dogs and I dealt with them, I pretty much just moved my greed guys up, and I went, well, I don't really have enough to sort of stop you anywhere else. So I'm going to park these guys here, I'm going to buff them up. And what I hope to do by doing that is basically, I'm going to hold you there because I've cleared out a lot of the rest of the field. And I'm going to get some counter charges in. So what ended up happening, I think, on the turn that he charged my greed guys, I would have had some magic up, and he probably didn't have any because I've killed his wizard. And I think he only got Rod of Battle left on his BSB. I had some magic of some kind. But he killed like 4, maybe 5 of the Chosen. And I did like, so that's like 10 wounds. I did a massive amount of wounds to him. I think I lost the combat by 1. Whatever it wasn't very much. Because I needed to make a break test, but I did hold on. Like, I've got, you know, leadership 9 because I've got a champion. I've got reroll break tests because I've got health watched armor. So I had to take a break test, and if I'd failed it, you know, I'd probably lose the unit. But it was actually a closer combat than I thought, given the fact that he's got multi-wins 2 against me, pretty much. Then, once he was sort of bogged down on them, I had a charge in his flank with my Lust Warriors. I jumped the wizards out of them beforehand. And a pretty short charge to the rear with my Gluttony guys. The Gluttony guys failed, but actually ended up being okay, because I got the Lust guys in the side. They still do have a lot of attacks. They still work well when I buff them with magic and stuff. And pretty much between the Greed Chosen that were remained and the Lust guys, I took him down, so we had too few models remaining to do enough damage basically to survive, so I ended up popping him there as well. So yeah, basically it was a big 20-0 win to me, where mainly the game came down to like one. I mean, I guess they're sort of related. Basically, the game, I think, was the fact that he pushed up a bit too aggressively with his 2 blocks in the middle, which allowed me to get, like, 2 Chosen into anything is almost certain death if I can, like, maximize decently on the frontage. So I think he should have just been more cagey around the middle and should have taken better advantage of the fact that he's got a unit in the Vampire Spawn who I'm going to find really troublesome if they get down and threaten my flanks. Particularly because, like, if he'd done that and then he'd pushed a turn later, say, and I took those 2 6 charges, if I then failed one of them and given my flank to the vampire spawn, I'm in a lot more trouble. So, yeah, there are a few things there I think that could have been done better by my opponent, basically, but gave me the opening to blast through, get into that vulnerable bunker, and Vampire counts as sort of one of those armies where sometimes you make those mistakes and they're just really punishing. So it's, you know, with, say, a Warriors army, you don't have that unit sitting at the back that if it dies, like, or the rest of your army is dying to leadership tests or anything. And yeah, I think pretty much that's sort of the punishing part about playing Vampire Covenant, that sometimes when you make a mistake and you get into a situation like this, your counterplay is really difficult. So after this had happened, there wasn't much my opponent could do to really stop me from pushing through and getting the 20, basically. That one's that. It sets me up for a game 3 against Sylvan Elves with the guy whose house I'm staying at over the weekend. So I might do that tonight. I know I've said that before and I never do. We'll see how that goes. If it all looks the same, it's happening on the same night. Cheers, guys.